roles, a lot of change management, talent management, end-to-end work in HR, and community engagement. He has been an outstanding leader in HR. Recently, he was recognized as Economic Times Emerging HR Leader last year, just a few months ago. So welcome, Rahul. I'm sure there is tremendous amount of insights that you are going to bring to all our viewers. So welcome, Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. So now I come to Mr. Varadharajan Sathyamurthy, very distinguished professional, very interesting career journey. Currently, he leads HR function, but has been, of course, in healthcare pharma for a long time, a renowned leader. He has been not only in HR, but also in strategic planning, commercial excellence, and been in P&L management, sales and marketing, and all of this. So a very well-rounded professional from different perspectives that he brings to the table. Currently, he leads HR as well as commercial excellence, learning and organizational development at Micro Labs. He has worked in the past in various reputed organizations like Pfizer, Novonesis, Merck, and so on. So very interesting profile, Mr. Varadharajan, senior leader in the industry. Again, warm welcome to you, Mr. Varadharajan.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Aditya.
And a pleasure. So now that we have the three leaders on the panel, let's get going. Let's first talk about the futuristic HR practices. I gave a little bit of a background as to where we are. India is known as the pharmacy of the world, and there is so much happening in the R&D space. So from that perspective, to whatever changes we are seeing right now, I would start with Sowmya, that what disruptions that you are seeing and what futuristic HR practices that you see that the pharma sector, life sciences sector are currently in practice.
Thanks, Aditya. I think we are at the right time, in the right place, right? When you talk about India and when you talk about pharma sector, right? Because India is really shining, right? With the China +1 strategy, with localization thrust even more. I think India is rightly placed, right? And I think even in the technological space, right? Apart from pharma, we've been doing well, right? Today, the global capability centers that are there in India are moving a notch up from being more of a transactional back office to now becoming more value added from a digital disruption and taking that on. Pharma companies across the globe, not only pharma but across the sectors, have a footprint today in India, both from many on the manufacturing front, but definitely on the global capability center point of view, right? I think that way it's great, to be in this place, right? From an HR practices point of view, what do I see as being really disruptive? I think the power of AI, right? Right from, in the screening, things are becoming a lot more easier. Of course, there is the risk of biased screening, right, which needs to be worked with. But that said, I think the ability for the tool to reduce going from 1,000 applicants to at least like a 50 good candidates, right? The time saved there and the efforts saved there, I think that's amazing. Right? Where AI has really done well is in transactions being moved away, right? In our organization, for example, these personalized messages that earlier you needed to have people sit in and send are now being, the process robotic automation has taken over, right? And with a lot more accuracy, obviously, right? And then, of course, you have chatbots, right? Also for the people and organization function, meaning HR, where the typical questions and the time spent in answering those typical questions are now being answered by the chatbot, reducing increasing the opportunity for meaningful conversations whenever it is had, whether it is between the leader and the employee or employee in the the HR team and all of that, right? Making space for meaningful conversations. Right. I see some of these as great ones, right? The thrust on diversity, right? Not from the angle of only aiming at diversity, but more focusing on that equitable organization, focusing on equity and inclusion, right? And because diversity doesn't only talk about gender or disability, it talks about simply the thoughts, right? And pushing for psychological safety, right, as an organization and the DNA of the organization. That I think is a great step that we see across organizations in my perspective. Yeah.
Great. Hey, thanks, Sowmya. You talked about power of AI in recruitment, power of AI, chatbots, and RPA in the employee engagement kind of activities. Also spoke about diversity and inclusion. Thanks for that. If I come to Mr. Varadharajan, if you could highlight some parts of the disruption that you are seeing today and why we need to really be thinking about futuristic HR practices. And if you can add to some of these futuristic HR practices, it will be great.
Okay, thanks, Aditya, and Sowmya, thanks for bringing that valid key points. What I clearly see is one of the disruption is no doubt technology. And I often clearly say that, we need to have a hybrid approach in HR. We can't get into the AI part or suddenly have a disruptive because all others are going. Because what is happening in life science or pharmaceutical sector in particular, the adoption towards the technology and new HR practices have still in the evolving phase. It has still not gone, especially in a country like India. So we probably have, at least in my organization, we have tried to have a hybrid approach. So what do I mean is, I see that in case of recruitment, let's say, so when we want to hire a talent, at times what happens is we need to look at the culture of the organization and look at the fitment of the role and then look at whether he is technological savvy or whether he can adapt to that culture, and then look at all these three levers and then try to see that how can we look at it. Maybe we are still going at a conventional way. And I completely agree that we could have many tools, which I was just attending a recent workshop in Microsoft, where they have got, even LinkedIn. They were trying to explain that how all these processes are AI driven and it makes easy life for HR and doing it. But one common sense question is, at least, face-to-face interaction, even, when we have a Zoom call interview, I clearly see that even our people, like business heads, they say that there is a lot of difference between just an interview, virtual as well as face-to-face. So often it can be debated. So the technology is a must. There is no doubt about it. But how do we adapt during the course of event is something which we need to see. And how do we digest it and try to see that it complements and be an enabler to business is something key question has to be addressed. Number two part, which is very, very key is presently in most organization, we have, all of you must be knowing that, Gen X, Y, Z is there. So the adoption would be different at each level, different. So we also have some of the people who have lived in this organization for 20, 30 years. And it's not easy for me to push under their throat to take up whatever is going to be available because they have been used to the way of working, how they. So what do I bring the change transformation is by three important ways. One, try to help them and get them aware that this is going to give a payoff so that I take along. And that's becoming a very important game changer for any HR in the organization. The second important aspect which we do is those who are neither the, somewhere who has 20, 30 plus years, but who are a little bit, who have come from different organizations, they are saying we know it, but they have lack of skills. So could we hire some experts and try to push them and they are able to get on board is something which we are also doing something. And last is the young generation are thirsty for getting into newer technological things, not knowing that are they overdoing it. How do we bring them down and tamper and trying to do that? So these are the three areas, boxes we have fit in, and we are able to make some headway into that as an organization across. Because we are into manufacturing, we are into sales and marketing, we are also into R&D facility, and across board, we see more or less similar challenges are coming in, and we are able to manage across like that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Varadharajan. You spoke about three aspects about how HR practices are still evolving, but technology has to be adapted. Then you spoke about multi-generational workforce and how do we deal with it and all of that. So thank you for bringing those perspectives. I come to Rahul. Rahul, what do you think about these aspects of adapting to the new technology, and what kind of HR practices you think are futuristic in that sense? Sowmya has already given a few examples. Mr. Varadharajan has given a few. You please feel free to add to that and talk about how companies are sort of adapting to some of these technologies and new stuff that's coming up.
So I would like to acknowledge a fact, what Mr. Varadharajan was also mentioning about uptake of technology in especially pharmaceutical industry, especially around the HR framework as such. So it's not as mature as we can compare with any other sectors like IT or FMCG or and a lot of other sectors where productivity, insights, all those kind of data enablement around manpower and especially huge organizations. So still there is a long way to go. What I've seen recently, technology should bring ease in the organization, and HR being a culture, stakeholder who brings that culture in the organization about the adoption and uptake. It has to play a big role in this game. So where we have seen one of our facility going for 4IR, where we had 28 different use cases, where we had machine learning, AI, all interacting and giving us insights around quality of manufacturing and what decisions people should be taking. But to enable those conversations, to enable your existing workforce to understand that, converse with that, have some specialist in, or you have as an HR leader, we have to think around how do we build that ecosystem? How do we make our organization ready for that uptake? How do we enable people from other sectors where these things are much prevalent, much faster, to come and partner with you and work with you on these kind of use cases? So that starts with that ecosystem, preparing the culture around it. At times we had to, create modules, certification, gamify it for voluntarily people taking it up. Few layers you had to, go about mandating it to do it, to understand it. And then we started using it. From a HR perspective, I would say, I've seen couple of years back, a half a decade back, people used to, our data becomes very critical data, HR data, be it for NRCs, be it for board reporting or anything. But people would take HR data with pinch of salt, right? And at times they would say this is HR data, while they won't say that for finance, right? At the same time, we at Cipla took, we now take pride that we have totally IT enabled those data. So whatever you want to understand about manpower, be it productivity, be it numbers, be it hours, be it anything, you get at a single sign-on. We realize that there are 20 different sign-ons required to get into different kinds of framework and different kinds of IT platform. We ensure that you have one single sign-on, you do it so that adoption is easier. So you click one laptop, you switch on your laptop, you can go anywhere. We then realized that there is a set of generation, a lot of people are on the move. So we created an app now. So for all the HR platforms and everything, there is one app, even volunteering bit, anything that you want to do. One app, you log in, you get everything in one place. Now, when we were working on, employee conversation, and now you have given a dashboard, still AI can be leveraged. We were into some iterations right now, and we are into some advanced iteration right now, where we realized it can become conversational. So couple of tools that have arrived in last 2 years have made the capability to have your database sitting there, and then you can have conversations. So instead of creating a particular dashboard, you can ask questions and do that. But there are a lot of concerns around privacy. There are a lot of concerns around data protection.
Yeah.
There is a long way to go, but yes, to start with, we should have some hygiene level in industry and make some acceptable moves for employee for adoption, and then we can leverage it. Yeah.
Right. So good, Rahul, thank you for bringing those interesting perspectives. I think what we are hearing so far about this point of why futuristic HR practices are required is, I think all our panelists have been saying that we have to deploy technology. We have to think for the future. If we don't do, then we will lose out. So that's, I think, coming through. But what's also interestingly coming through, I think, for HR people to really spot the use cases where this technology or futuristic practices can be deployed. And then finally, I think it boils down to execution, where we need to really adapt or use a kind of a mixed approach, some of it mandatory, some of it by influencing, by nudges, by sort of motivating people to use those, adapt those, and especially when there are people of different generations who are there on these in the organization, and all of them need to really work together. So very interesting aspect. So what we are saying is technology is not enough. It's also how we adapt it and how we prepare our workforce to actually embrace it. So I think that's what I heard from Sowmya, Rahul, and Varadharajan. So thank you for bringing this aspect. Now I'll move on to the second aspect of our panel discussion. We have received a question on LinkedIn from, I think, Mr. Lalit Kumar, who's asking about the pharma e-commerce side of it. I will take that question in the third segment and see that what comments that our panelists have. So moving on to the second aspect about usually in any HR conversations that we have, all of us know that culture in an organization plays a very important role. And many of us are today, the entire world and post-COVID, I think all organizations, responsible organizations, have been thinking of mental well-being of the employees as well. So it is not a point of debate that culture and mental well-being are important. It is not to be debated. I think we need to, I would request all three of you to just give a few examples of some outstanding HR practices that you have noticed, either in your organization or in the industry, related to establishing a company culture which is enabling the entire workforce to deal with the future challenges. And secondly, the employee well-being part of it. You may choose to answer both questions or just pick one and just give a few so that our viewers who are watching this are able to sort of relate with it and take away some insights. Whosoever wants to start, I don't want to dictate an order here. So please go on.
Okay, I think I'll take this.
Yeah.
So well-being most often is referred to as, so do we have the right insurance policies? Do we have an employee assistance partner who's ensuring there is, all of that? But I think for me, well-being is the fundamental because we've seen that psychological safety, when created, is the one true differentiator for a great performance, right? When an employee feels that, they will not be judged for what they say, what they express, right? They can ask stupid questions, they can make stupid mistakes, of course, not repeat them all the time, but that's psychological safety, right? So it is fundamental, yeah. To create this, we can sit and prepare all the missions and the values and the, everything to ensure that employee gets that experience. It is the leader that delivers it, right? And so in our organization, we've mostly focused on, first of all, being very clear on, we call it culture commitments, right? Who, and then giving the framework to leadership and helping them spar and, focus on how do you balance the business results and the human-centered organization, because that's the future, right? Um, and this happens because leadership is a journey. We evolve every day, right? So how do we help leaders reflect on how they are moderating themselves, right? How are they being the role models in delivering a great culture and well-being, right? Is something that we focus on. How do we do this? First of all, of course, trainings in cohorts and dilemma coaching and all of that. But also we have, of course, the forums available for employees who feel that they're not heard, right? I think that's very important. Plus, there are peer support groups and employee resource groups that kind of form this network of employees who come together to talk about the culture and the well-being, right? Because culture shouldn't be on the walls or in your, employee handbooks. It should be in our everyday conversation, right? And that has been our focus. Yes, I think that's me.
Okay.
Let me
That's
take.
good. Yeah.
So I think Sowmya brought a very important point, and I love those important messages that culture is all about how we live inside the organization. It should not be just on boards. I think that's a take, and that's very important for organization. But well said and done. I think culture, according to me, is top down and not bottom up. It's all how the entire visualization happens at the top level. I have whatever is the experience I had, and we also believe inside the organization how we are living with it. One is how the employee is engaged, number one. Now, I would first put that how I take the culture, and then the trade-off is well-being, not the other way around. Why I'm telling you is if I build a culture as a HR as well as the business together, one is how I can make each and every employee engaged. Do I cross-check? Do I go and talk to them? Do we all believe together that one employee who's sitting in the company is well engaged? He loves to come on every day, Monday morning. These are cross-section of questions we do ask. And if we find the right questions, answer and response coming out, that means something is good is happening. If it is not, probably we look at it. So we call it a share of voice. And the second aspect is the career path. What happens is in an organization where the culture is stitched towards trying to build a career path together, because everybody has an aspiration. Whoever comes, they want to become big. So, but what happens during the course of event, they start getting either into a comfort zone or they try to see that I can't go up. So when we are hearing them enough and there is a career path clearly laid out, I think that becomes a very important stickiness towards the organization. So which we are working out. And the third is development. See, I being a part of LNOD, and we have a large team of learning and development team. I still remember when we started the organization, we have 4 or 5 retired employees trying to say that I will teach. But today I am very glad to say teaching is not that training or learning is not teaching. We said it's not even sharing experience. Trying to make them aware, trying to build a conscious culture inside people that I am fit to do the job and how can I deliver results for the organization. So I can make it happen. I think the magic is beginning there. And last but not the least, to build a very important culture is compensation. Because when people leave, they normally, most of them, they say, I left because of compensation. So it's a no-brainer. But when we go a little deep inside, the compensation is a part of influence. They're not taking compensation, they are taking many other elements towards around it. So there is an orchestra of things which builds that compensation. So it's not money transaction or something. So I clearly see this 4 element and then build a culture. And if the culture is good, then we add on that wellness together becomes a good organization. You just create wellness, culture is not there. I don't think so it's going to make making a good hit. This is the point which I've learned, and we are trying to build an organization with that vision. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for both of you for those points. If I can just push this a little further, there are questions that people ask that what happens to someone who is unable to cope up with the demands of the business, with the deliverables of the business. One has either due to one's own limitation or due to that environment, an employee is not able to really deliver the results. So the employee is failing. So how do we ensure that the culture and well-being and all of this is, of course, culture and well-being are connected, but how do we make sure that people don't fail? Um, what role do we play in HR for that? What's your take on this? We spoke about psychological
See,
safety and all of these. So, yeah. Yeah, Rahul.
yeah, so interesting thoughts there and very contextual things. So we were talking about culture, we're talking about well-being, and rightly said, it doesn't come along when the leadership themselves are not equipped to handle it. So that comes first, and
Absolutely.
especially around managing performances and managing people's motivation around it. At times, yes, people reach into stages of their career where they don't have clarity. When they are disengaged, active disengagement also happens. But
Yes.
our leaders, so as an organization, do we acknowledge if they are trained to handle such situations? Are they do our leaders can act as coaches? So that's one important skills that many organizations, including ours, is actually working on. We actually work even coaching skills, top-notch coaching skills for even mid-management, because we realized at the end of the day, any culture that we are talking about, it flows from up there. And it only sustains when people have, your leadership have those skills to handle such situations. So that's one thing. And as an organization, what do we reward? So do we reward only sustained performance? Do we also reward certain leadership essentials which signify the culture that your organization stands for? So for in our case, caring for life or lead with empathy is one such culture. So do we actually reward? Do we measure it? How do we acknowledge it in our own talent discussions, in our own framework of things around from leadership promotions and movements? So those conversations become more important from top there, because culture only sustains when leadership is equipped. So some one part is equipping the leadership to handle it through skills and processes, and another part is how do we measure it. So yeah.
So, good. Thank you, Rahul. Anything that Soumya, Mr. Varadharajan, you want to add to this point of performance dimension?
See, Aditya, you asked a very pertinent question. When there is a lack of performance, I feel that two things which is being seen with the employee. One is his belief system and his behavior, because that throws out that. So what we have seen is that if his belief is that he can do it and he has got the skill set and he's not doing it, something must be environmentally wrong. Maybe he's superior manager or something. So we have diagnosed that how do we put the PIP process in place, performance improvement plan. So normally it was a bad word that somebody is put on PIP, because it has been told that, I'm in PIP, so I'm in a, radar or something can happen. So what we honestly sold very effectively inside the company is that PIP is not that you're going to be out of the company. It's a good chance for you to improve, and the organization is looking at you as a future potential. So let's try to join hands to see that how we build together. So there, apart from the immediate manager, there is going to be a coach or a mentor who is also joining and trying to help both manager as well as that person to do that. However, are we successful? Sometimes yes, sometimes we are still not been able to successful. When we are successful, we say, okay, there is a reward and we are able to go forward. But when they are not successful, we then take an important decision where we say, okay, it doesn't work out. Probably it is not fitting him to be in this role. Is there any future role? If it is not there, then we say part ways or something has to be the last resort. So ideally, we are working towards it. Are we successful, if you ask me? May not be. We are midway through. Sometimes it has worked very well in a bookie style. Sometimes, we have got into a trap and we still struggle because some of the areas we are not finding that going right. So this is what I would say my experience is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Aditya, just a two-liner, right? So I think Varadharajan made a very good point around skill versus will, right? As long as there is will, we can make things work, right? If this is for an employee who is at a life stage, because of that life stage, they are not able to deliver, right? And fixing that environment. I believe after pandemic has only taught us and has made it possible to exercise a lot more flexibility than we originally thought possible, right? So I think as HR, today there are a lot more things that are on the table that we can look at to help people go through that life stage in a good way so that they are able to contribute to the same level, at least in the future, if not immediately, right?
Sure.
Again, it's an environmental thing. So,
Sure. Hey, thank you. Thank you all for sort of bringing out some of these very interesting facets of how HR must play a very significant role in organizations to make this thing flow through right from the top till the bottom and deal with all the challenges which come on the way. I think the second part of it is more important than the first part. All right, thank you all. Let me come to the last segment of our conversation, which is about the industry-related challenges. Our industry, pharma and life sciences industry, it has evolved quite a lot in the last few years, and it's going to evolve a lot more. Of course, nobody has seen the future, but we can see some trends. We know how things might happen. So what is your opinion or perspective about what should HR people do to kind of get their heads around the kind of changes which are going to happen in the industry and how this rapidly evolving industry changes need to be adapted, need to be embraced? So that's the question. Maybe Sowmya, you can start, and then Rahul, and then I will let Varadharajan give it a final closure, and then we'll try taking some questions.
Sure. I think change has become the change cycles have come down drastically, right? Rapid change is, I think from a UCA, we've now moved to a Bani world, right? So from a geopolitical point of view, from a, environment point of view and all of that. So some of the areas that I think in HR, it becomes pertinent for us to look into is, as Mr. Varadharajan said earlier, digital dexterity. When we are looking at talent in the future, skill building, or the focus towards having a very continuous learning mindset, right? I think these become very important for us to be change ready, right? How do we as an organization continuously keep ourselves updated or even become thought leaders, right? In our organization, again, pandemic was one of those very pivotal moments when we had to suddenly rethink everything we were doing, right? So from then to now, my reflection has been that we become thought leaders when we are encouraging voices from across, right? And a lot of times we keep thinking that we know better. We are in HR, we know what practices are going on. We have that knowledge from the benchmarking organizations, but just hear out your employees, right? So we've always often created these hackathons or cross-functional project groups focused on employee experience and things like those, which have given us actually some of the very commonsensical, ideas, which have then gone on to become industry practices. So this whole hybrid versus remote and all of these things, we were able to think beforehand, before it became a thing, right? So I think it's about keeping your, eyes and ears open to hear from everybody, all walks of life.
Super. Okay,
So,
Rahul.
yeah. So I echo with Soumya what, especially around digital dexterity, and so it's already in, it's already seeped in very deep, and especially around pharma, we started with that the adoption of technology, be it operation, be it commercial side of the business, is going to be much bigger than we are actually right now into, and it's going to be very fast, and it's already started with that. And the need is the kind of environment that we operate in. We are much regulated. And be it our sales side of the business or our operation side of business, we're very regulated. And that gives us very less room. So every time regulatory expectations are going up with every each audit that you see in India happening after COVID. And a lot of organizations are into this right now. So the kind of technology adoption that we are going to see, and the sooner as HR business partner or HR leaders, we make our organization ready towards adoption of these things and the readiness of talent, it will help the organization to cope up with this expectation. In terms of our own house, so using generative AI, so I remember a couple of years back when we were parsing something, we would get 50-60% of accuracy on chatbot. Right now, you load something, it would take days to do that. Right now, it's 20 minutes to parse us or something, whatever document you want to parse, and it becomes conversational between 20 minutes to 30 minutes. That's the kind of change we have already seen in couple of years, 2-3 years. So yes, how do we make our teams ready, talent ready as an HR? So that's the important game that is going to help organization. Yeah.
So thank you, Rahul. Varadharajan.
Yeah. See, I agree with both Soumya and Rahul. I have a little bit different. So I have an acronym which normally I believe that the question which you are answering, critical. HR would play a very critical role. What do I mean by critical is, first C stands for customer. So HR would be very important to understand who is the customer we are going to take them along with the new change, and who are the customers who we would not take them. They could be a band baggage. I think we play a very important role making the change and deliver happen. So customer identification becomes very important. I would say customer targeting and segmentation. Very clear HR's role. Then comes the second, respect for people. During the change management, the communication becomes very critical. So how is the HR going to communicate to each and every one about how the change is important and how it's going to be there? It's not about just eyes and ears alone, but it's also the entire body moving to the new change. So how are you going to adapt the mind and soul towards the newer change management is something where the HR would play a very important role. Third comes the integrity. We have to be sincere. I think as an HR partner with the business, we need to be having the highest amount of integrity, keep the transparency in every communication, and don't hide facts. Because at times, we take the side of management and we don't take the employee. I think that creates a lot of rift. I see a couple of new multinationals, or some of them have asked people to go, but where they've successfully managed is because of the transparency. They're given a huge amount of clear communication down the level. This is what we are going to do. This is what would happen. I think that makes the employee comfortable and they don't go and make unnecessary noise outside. And then comes very important is T, which is nothing but time management. Because everything which we have to do, we can't keep on saying I'm doing. As very rightly said by Rahul, if chatbots are good and it's more of a consultative method rather than only transactional, I think that is where we could use, and we should not overuse things, or we should not underuse also. Somewhere that part again, HR plays a role. And then comes I, which is very important, is innovation. Disruption or digitalization is good, but not at the cost of people. Because what's happening at times, I'm telling you, we were going for some huge system renovation in some of the plant. We said we will completely go with the automation, not realizing there is a huge amount of people who, they have to be there. And believe me, who came first was the managing director, who said, I'm not going to change, and these people are my hazards. So I think that talks volumes as an organization. So I believe that that's very important. Not just take system for the sake of taking. And finally, always anything which we do, even in technology or people, it should be community at large. Don't do anything which could have a repercussion at the community. So which can have a larger repercussion for the organization brand image. And finally, I want to conclude by only saying that alignment, AL, critical. So I would say that AL is finally trying to look at whichever we do, aligning to the overall organization visions and goals. And for every step of this critical management, I think HR plays a very vital role. And I believe that implementing each and everything takes organization to the next goal, which we are all visualizing. And that's what exactly we do in our organization.
Sure. So thank you very much for bringing out an interesting dimension called critical, which is customer identification, to respect for people, to integrity, time management, and so on, community alignment, and all of that. So very interesting. I think what I'm hearing from our panel is that the pace of change is going to go up. The need for dexterity or agility is going to go up as well in the days to come. And then the regulatory environment possibly is going to be a lot more dynamic than what it is today. So that's the kind of future that we see, and we as HR people need to really possibly keep our ears and eyes open, ears grounded, and we need to evolve solutions by involving employees grounds up, create various forums by which we are able to involve and pick up their ideas. And then I think another interesting thing that I heard from our panel today is about how do we nurture continuous learning mindset amongst employees. I think that's important because a lot of change is going to happen. So we have to keep our minds open. Employees need to keep their minds open. They need to learn new things. They need to adapt to new things. Then the change management becomes a little better. So I think these are some of the very interesting things that we heard. I think there are some comments, some questions about pharma e-commerce, that what's the future and how do you think, what's the future of pharma e-commerce? It's not really a question pretty much on the HR aspect. However, somebody has put that question. Any of you want to pick that question and give some comments? What's the future of pharma e-commerce?
So it's a symbiotic ecosystem. So the e-commerce is old now. So it is now maturing, I would say, in India. So it started way early, and people were worried how these channel partners would work. Will it disrupt the existing channels, and how would we do business? But what we are realizing now, it's a symbiotic relationship. Both will exist, and companies will have to leverage both sides of it, be it e-commerce or your traditional channels. So I think that's the way this sector will also go. It will never be skewed towards e-commerce or only the traditional one. So it will be symbiotic. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I guess we have had a very interesting conversation. We sort of covered various dimensions of the future readiness that organizations need to think of, and how HR will become a sort of an agent in driving the organization and preparing the organization to become future ready. It is not only the R&D or the sales or marketing, branding, but it's also HR, which has to play a very, very interesting role and critical role. So thank you, Sowmya. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Varadharajan, for giving all your time here and all your energy, bringing the insights that you all have gathered over years of experience, and in your conversations with business leaders as well as the HR fraternity, that we hope that in the last 45-50 minutes, we were able to present a very sort of a very important capsule of some of these practices for the viewers. I feel that they will find it useful. Thank you again very much. All the best to all of us. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to connect. Thank you, Aditya, for bringing us together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aditya. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sowmya. Thanks a lot, Rahul.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great
Thank you
connecting.
very much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.